Hello and happy summer 2024. My name is Vinny, and this podcast usually pops up from various different countries around the planet. It's kind of the point in it. So normally at this point I'd say hello and welcome to Papua New Guinea, or hello and welcome to the Vatican, or hello and welcome to Norway. I've been to two of those. I'd love to go to Papua New Guinea. It's on the list. I'm on a mission to get to 100 countries. I'm on 93. I've been stuck on 93 for a while. And so normally, you'd hear a podcast now about where I am, and then you'd hear a little bit about it, and you'd laugh your tits off and learn something and think, oh, what an informative, super-duper guy. I must pay him some money. But unfortunately, I don't think that's really going to happen on this episode. It's just a quick update, really, to let you know what I'm up to. So it'll be quite a quick one. So I'm currently in the East End of London, where people sound like this. All right, mate, can I have the most ping-pong tiddly in the nuclear sub? Oh, that's a lovely Aristotle. No one understands it here either. And I won't be doing a podcast from England because, well, you can't do one of your home country, can you? I mean, your home country doesn't count, does it? Also, I just wouldn't know where to start. It does make me think, actually, about how lacking in detail a lot of the podcasts are on the sheer feeling of intimidation I feel about doing a podcast about England. Oh, where do I start? Stonehenge with some druids? Do I talk about the royals? Oh, Christ. What about our train service? Our recent government change? You know what I mean? And then I think about what I normally do in podcasts, and I don't talk about any of those things. So I suppose really it's a bit of a laugh. So the reason I leave this podcast in your feed is to let you know what's going on. So in the way of travel podcasts, I have two brewing. The two that are brewing, two that are going to come up, hopefully in the not too distant future, are Ireland, a podcast about Ireland, and a podcast about Spain, both of which I've been to many times, both of which I love dearly. So they're quite positive podcasts, and might well give you some ideas if you fancy a bit of travelling somewhere hot or Celtic. So nothing in the way of travel on this particular podcast, but I would like to plug something, if I may, and it's also my excuse for not doing anything recently. Because I've been busy planning something else, I haven't had time to travel. Also, I'm not made of fucking money, although I would be if you went to vinnywhite.co.uk and donated. I mean, do a charity first. Amnesty International, maybe. And then if you've got anything left, I'll have the change. I don't think I'm worthy of any large donations. Now, however, having said all that, there is one thing I would like you to do, and this is where I'm going with this. I've been a bit busy. I've been planning something. I've got a thing coming up, and it is the Edinburgh show. So the Edinburgh Festival is the biggest arts festival in the world, and I've never been. So I really wanted to go, but I thought, well, why just go when you can perform? So about a year ago, I applied to become part of the Edinburgh Festival, and after a bit of paperwork and some money and some fannying around, basically, I'm in, and it's going to happen, and I'm running a show every night for 11 nights in a row, and I'd love you to come. So if you are in, around, near Edinburgh, or you're just rich and you fancy a break from, I don't know, wherever you live in New Zealand, then get yourself on a plane. It's quite a lot to ask, isn't it? Hey, Auckland residents, would you mind flying to Scotland for a 1-hour show? You know, it might be a bit much. It's probably more likely if you're a Scottish person or already visiting the festival. I'd love you to come. The show is called The History of Electronic Music. And if you'd like to learn more about the show, go to historyofelectronic.com. Historyofelectronic.com with some information about the show. It's also got a YouTube clip of the show, and it's also got links where you can buy tickets to come and see me in Scotland if you are available. So I'd love you to come. I'd love you to just come to the Edinburgh Festival anyway, because apparently it's just fantastic. And whilst I'm not making any travel podcasts at the moment, it's all been culminating in a big show that starts on August the 1st in Edinburgh. All the information at historyofelectronic.com. And yeah, come along. It'd be fun to have you. I guess really I should probably leave some audio of the show so you know what you're getting yourself into. Plus, at least that way you've been mildly entertained on this podcast. I've done this show a fair few times in various places. It used to be an hour and a half long with a break in the middle. I've had to shorten that for the Edinburgh Festival, so I think I've got it down to an hour. And I think that's quite good because it's made it really punchy, and I think it's quite funny, I have to say. I know that I'm biased, but I really have enjoyed writing it, and I've had quite a few laugh out loud moments, and there's quite a lot of audience interaction in this one as well. So really looking forward to doing the history of electronic music at the Edinburgh Festival. I'd love you to come. Do buy a ticket or find out more at historyofelectronic.com. In the meantime, here is a recording of a show I did a few years ago. I'd say it's got a lot better since I did this. At least I hope so. I will give you a recording of my Ireland or Spain podcast once I've edited it, but unfortunately that might be quite a long time because I've got a feeling I'm going to be busy in Edinburgh, not only doing my show, but watching lots of other shows as well. So I'm really looking forward to going up there and living in Scotland for a couple of weeks this August. All right, take care, enjoy yourself. And if you want to get in touch, vinnywhite.co.uk, vinnywhite.co.uk. And yeah, also, should I? Yeah, why not? Might as well. If you own a venue or an arts festival and you want an act, then I might be interested in coming. Yeah, I think that's fair, isn't it? Yeah, I've asked you quite a lot on this podcast, and you've asked nothing of me. And I'm just not sure how that's fair. So I'll just interpret you asking me to shut the fuck up and get on with it. Coming up. All right, big love. Determined to crack on, at 24, he opened the Kakahashi Radio Electrical Appliance Store, where he repaired electronics. But at night, instead of fiddling with his organ, he invented organs. He wanted musical instruments to be accessible for professionals as well as have-a-go heroes like him. Having started all those years ago fixing timing devices and music devices, by the 70s he was inventing keyboards that made Rob Wave's organ from earlier look ancient, and a box of tricks that made beats called the R1 Rhythm Ace, a drum machine. A man with a knowledge of timing devices and music devices had invented the world's arguably first drum machine. Why? This was specifically to replace a drummer in a band. This was an electronic drummer, one that didn't lose his way and cost nothing to play per hour. And he could play whatever you wanted forever, and he'd never mess up. Just one issue though, it didn't sound much like a drummer. Yeah. The world's first drum machine sounded a bit silly. And don't get me wrong, the Rhythm Ace sounded more like a drummer than a watermelon or a woodpecker, but it needed to be reinvented, and it needed to be reinvented quickly. Mr. Kakahashi was now making, not fixing, making musical instruments. Time then for a company name. In Japanese, a keyboard is a kibodo, not to be confused with a kimono. Never finger a kimono without being asked. But a kibodo is a keyboard, and a drum machine is a dorama machine. So he could have called it Kakahashi's Kibodos and Dorama Machine. Catchy. So he got a phone book. This is honestly true. He got a phone book and looked under the letter R for a nice, simple Western name. Roland. The Roland Corporation was born. There he is. He led it for 4 decades, this guy, while rival companies Moog and ARP targeted professional musicians. The Rhythm Ace flopped. It was a fuck-up. And it kind of made sense. It just didn't sound right. It was a failure. It was like that Microsoft paperclip that used to look a bit like a sexual predator. No one wanted it. In 1980, for those that had loads of money, Roland's competitor was called Linn. Now, Linn came out with the Linn LM1, which is an incredibly boring name, but it was actually quite successful. They only made 500, but all the studios bought them. And studios were it, right? You couldn't make records at home in these days. The Linn sounded like a drummer because essentially it was a drummer. It was a recording of a drummer that had been sampled and put across loads of pads. Prince, for example, loved it.
Dig, if you will, the picture of you and I engaged in a kiss.
Lynn was winning. Mr. Kakahashi needed to make something new, affordable and special, and he needed to make it fast. He realised the new snazzy microprocessors could be used to make and program drum machines. Now, don't forget, this is a guy that had the determination of character that you might have when absolutely everything has gone against you for your entire life. So he just kept going. And so it was. He invented the Roland 808 rhythm composer. The 808, this bad boy, generated sounds using analog synthesis rather than playing samples. Which is a lot better, but, you know, it wasn't... Like, someone, just clap, Amy, just clap your hands together. Yeah. It's not really there, is it? You know, that's the hand clap. And the bass drum was quite good. I do, can you keep doing I like that. Have you got a bass drum? This is the bass drum. Actually, the bass drum was pretty good. But the snare, like, this is a real snare. All right, that's what the Lynn sounded like, because it recorded a man playing the snare drum. This sort of sounds like a fairy sneeze. As for the cowbell, right, this is the cowbell on the 808, which, I mean, it does sound cool, but, you know, it wasn't exactly freaking out shepherds. I mean, this is a real cowbell being hit with a stick. 808 cowbell, real cowbell. And this is a real cow being hit with a stick. The 808 sounds don't really resemble percussion. Futuristic, like little farts in the bath. This thing was here to replace a drummer, generating infinite loops of drums. So did it? Well, actually, yes. Let's have a little game of can you name this tune from the 808? Can anyone tell me what this is? I think the first one was Dan, Dave. I'm sorry, mate. I know you're competitive. Dan's got it. It was, of course, Marvin Gaye. 808 throughout. All right, name this one. First one to win gets a free beer. It is hard. Think 80s. Yes! Was that you? Well done. Go on! Hang on. Toyin, you've seen this show before. That was just a cheap beer, wasn't it? Fuck me. You're still getting one, because you've been twice, and that deserves a reward. The 808 launched in 1980, and it cost about £1,000, equivalent to £4,000 today, which, by the way, happens to be their price now on eBay, because they're now a collector's item. Can anyone name this? Voodoo Ray is right. Free beer for you. What's your name? Come and see me, Tim. That is Voodoo Ray. The Roland 808 ended up being used by iconic acts such as Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, and our buddies from earlier, Public Enemy, straight out of Compton. Kanye West dedicated an entire album, actually, to the sound, with every single song on the album using an 808. Which is a shame, because I love the 808, and Kanye West is a bit of a twat. Today, you can still hear the 808 used in loads of tracks. Right now, for example, this is Jamie XX with Gosh. For me, is a pouty tune. Oh, I love a tune that makes me pout. As the years went by, loads of drum machines became available on the second-hand market. Loads of these, snapped up by hip-hop and house producers in Chicago, Detroit, and to a degree, London. Now, you could be inspired by a track and then try to reproduce parts of it on your Roland gear. For example, what happens if you're inspired by a disco beat? What happens if you were inspired by a Donna Summer track? What about if we take some chords? We could be inspired by the chords from this Klein and MBO. So you could be inspired by that, and then why rent a choir when you could just sample one? Maybe one from a Kraftwerk record. So if you throw all of that together, all those inspirations and that sample, you've got one of the best-selling tracks of all time. Clocking in at 7.5 minutes, it's one of the longest songs to grace the UK chart. How does it feel? There's a great fact about this, by the way. Blue Monday, the single cover, was so expensive to produce with all those holes that they lost money on every sale. New Order that wrote it were also part of the Hacienda, which never, ever made any money. So they were like really good at failure, but evidently really good at music. Actually, if you want, now they can make money because now you can buy it as a cushion. So it's a bonus. This is quite cool, actually. We're going to play with time a little bit here. Imagine if you had all the instrumentation that was available in the 30s and you tried to make Blue Monday. This is it. This is Blue Monday made with harpsichords and everything that was available in the 30s. Now, at roughly the same time as the 808 coming out, Mr. Kakahashi gave us tonight's final box of tricks. It was the TB303. This fairly dull-looking box, another very important part of musical history. The TB303 was supposed to do what the 808 did in a way. The 808 was supposed to replace a drummer, and this was supposed to replace a bass guitarist. The 808, as we know, still it isn't really as popular as a real drummer. The 303 sort of failed to replace the guitar, really. But it did make a whole subgenre of music, another happy accent for our Japanese friend. Let's not go quite into this with the nerdy levels we did before, but let's just look at this. This is a sample from the TB303. It was used in some 80s cheesy tracks. Here's another one.
This is nowhere alright. After justice last night, beyond the law and so high, way past reason, oh my, I get away.
So it sounds all right. What happened next, though, was amazing. Again, in those second-hand shops in Detroit and Chicago, the same black Americans that were messing around with the 808s found the 303s and messed with them too. And rumours spread that to program this little Roland box was tricky and annoying. You could get some weird sounds out of it, though, just by messing with the buttons. So you could start with the bass line. That is the 303. But then what happens if you tweak it up a little bit? So it goes from bass guitar into like a drowning digital duck. And that is a brilliant start because you could push it further, getting rid of the bloody bass guitar altogether and just going for the squeaky stuff. That is that.
And so in 1987, a few years after Roland stopped making this, a guy in Chicago bought one at the Five and Dime store, and he made what is considered to be the first acid tune, acid tracks. This acid tasted. It brewed and bubbled like a healthy fart until it made it. It made it to the UK, but now it was in the UK. This wasn't underground stuff. This was chart-topping, top-of-the-pop stuff. Britain changed it and made it massively popular.
Pass the mic. What time is love? What time is love? What time is love? What time is love?
Long after Roland stopped making it, the 303 became the must-have for any bedroom producers, and acts as big as Massive Attack and Madonna. Its value rocketed so much, it became out of reach for most people. Even now, they're worth £2,500 on eBay, which is why I don't have one. So the 303 can be manipulated post-production to sound... Mum, can you block your ears for a second? The 303 can be manipulated post-production to sound dirtier than the sock I used to keep behind my bed when I was 15. Unblock, that's fine, that's all good. It's a weird moment in my life. But tonight, we have learned that a simple flute made of bone eventually became the Roman harmonium that evolved into Rob Wave's organ, which eventually became a keyboard that gave us... Kraftwerk in the 70s, the same town where those bone flutes were discovered. And they were making us think about our new world. With Kakahashi's machines and the samples of any record ever made, the whole music scene of electronics exploded into drum and bass, house, trance, chill out, trap, and whatever I'm blue, dabba dee, ba da do is. I don't know what that is, but fast forward today, and of course, things were sped up. A lot. That's also an audio representation of Boris Johnson's mind today. And so, since I first attempted mixing electronic music, I've grown into a DJ, working on Canadian radio for 12 years or so, before returning to England to do these shows and teach DJing. Sometimes, when I'm on my own, lining up and mixing tune after tune in a hazy state of euphoria, perhaps heightened by a few glasses of red, I feel the rapture that my ancestors must have felt when they were around a fire, listening to people hit rocks to a hollowed-out log. Since I've got my decks, my rave records have become trance records, they became house records and hip-hop. Physical discs, in a way, became unneeded, and my entire selection became digital. So did yours. The last few years, I've been massively into really deep beats and deep breaks. Exploring the depths of this music, I sometimes feel like I'm climbing inside the track, lifting up rhythmic trapdoors, tunneling under layers of synth, lost in samples and echo-filled bliss. Hairs standing on end. Am I the music? Where does it stop and I start? I'm amongst the melody. DJing makes me feel closer to it. Looping sections, looping loops, echoing voices, dropping beats. How can I ever thank the bedroom producers that I benefited from? How can I thank the rappers that expressed their anger for my pleasure? How can I thank the French guy that recorded gravel? The Japanese guy that obsessed about sound and created instruments that changed the musical world? Above and Beyond, Chicane, NWA, Cypress Hill, Left Field, The Prodigy, and the other 10,000 artists. The Winstons, who never even got paid for inadvertently creating drum and bass and jungle. How can I thank them? Hopefully I did just thank them a bit. One person I can thank is David Barman, who gave me that mixtape to change my life. Thanks, David. Thank you, Sway Bar, and thank you for coming.